Rifle reliability, then and now. So a lot's been said about the reliability of various service rifles that we've issued in the United States. Let's take a comparison of the data from testing before World War II and our current issue service rifle. Before World War II, ultimately, of course, the trials were won by the Garand. However, there were also entries from Johnson Automatics, the M1941, and from Winchester. There were a variety of tests that took place, and ultimately they put 12,000 rounds through each test rifle to determine which was more reliable. As it turns out, as anyone that understands rifles knows, the Garand won. It proved to be the most reliable of those tested. The Garand ended up with 1,480 total malfunctions of the 12,000 rounds fired and 49 failures. That was parts broken that needed to be replaced or repaired. The Johnson had 1,547 stoppages and 72 failures, and Winchester's entry had 2,864 stoppages and 97 failures, which was roughly double the number of problems that the Garand had. So that works out to the best case scenario being the Garand, with a stoppage rate of 12%. For every 100 rounds fired, you would expect about 100 stoppages. That was the best of the tests. So how does that compare to modern rifles? Well, the M16 received some criticisms in a few circles, largely due to issues that arose during the Vietnam era. Never mind, that's been completely fixed. But there was an attempt. In 2007, there was a test conducted that was called the Extreme Dust Test. There were 10 separate M4s, each firing 6,000 rounds per, and they were tested against a number of other weapons, notably the FN SCAR, the HK416, and the XM8. The data from this test was used at the congressional level in a push to indicate why the M4 wasn't suitable, because it had the worst test results of the bunch. The XM8 ended up with the best results. The HK and FN, HK416 and the FN ended up at roughly the same, and the M4 had the worst result, thus prompting a push to maybe the M4 needs to go away. So how did that compare? Well, the Garand ended up with its 12% stoppage rate. The Extreme Dust Test, which was used to push for removal of the M4 as unreliable, was 1.4%. So if you compare on a shot-by-shot basis, the Extreme Dust Test indicates that the M4 is about 10 times more reliable than the M1 when it was first fielded. It's also worth noting that the Extreme Dust Test was an outlier. The data reported in that particular test has never been replicated or explained by the Army Research Lab. In other words, it was an outlier. Every other reliability test of the M16 M4 series ultimately showed it was more reliable than the Extreme Dust Test, and those results were 10 times better than that of the M1. The good news of that is, hey, the stuff we currently issue is pretty darn good, and it's only gotten better over the decades. So something to consider.